Welcome back, everyone. Today is Saturday, November 7th, and I feel totally obligated and compelled to give you an election update as promised. The last video that I did the day before the election, it was actually the morning of, I essentially predicted the winner. It's becoming very, very clear that Joe Biden will, in fact, win the election. Whether or not that actually means he's the next president, depending on what Trump could pull out of his sleeve, will remain to be seen. But Biden will be the president-elect, and we'll probably find out today. He'll probably get enough votes and enough electoral votes to hit that 270 magical number, because Pennsylvania will be reporting their remainder of the final votes, and that will put Biden over the edge. Now, depending on what network you're watching or where you're getting results, you might see from AP, the Associated Press, that they currently have Biden and Trump, Biden being at 264 and Trump at 214. Or, as I'm watching right now, CNN has Biden at 253 and Trump at 213. So depending on where you're getting your sources, basically Biden is in the lead and he's about to clinch the presidency. Biden broke his good friend Obama's record for the highest number of votes ever received by a candidate in history. Trump being at number 2. He's actually in second place. He still beat Obama's record. Biden has right now over 74 million. It's actually closer to 75 million. Trump has over 70 million. It's more like 75,500,000. And so those two candidates are the highest number of votes ever produced in U.S. history. All the while, overnight, we learned that one of the Trump administration's top officials and White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, who has been very instrumental in the stimulus negotiations, has in fact tested positive for the virus. He's the latest staff member to test positive for the virus, and what's dangerous about that is he was around many officials on election night in the election party in the RNC, such as Jared Kushner, Kayleigh McEnany, although Kayleigh already had it. Whether or not Kushner had it or not, maybe he's hiding it. In fact, Mark Meadows told his staff around him that he wanted to try to keep it a secret, so that way the media wouldn't make a big deal. But of course, that is not the case. He was also around Trump, and keep in mind that Mark Meadows was maskless. He could have been spreading that virus to everyone around him. So by the time you see this video, some networks might have actually called the race already and might actually put Biden above 270 if he could squeeze out Pennsylvania, which we're getting and waiting on those results just in hours from now. So basically, I just want to cover all the states and basically how Biden won and how many electoral votes he can get, the maximum number, and then the least number. We could also look at that combination as well. And then my thoughts and opinions on what could take place as we approach December and then January. So right off the bat, we have Georgia, and the Trump campaign said that if Trump were to lose Georgia, then it would be over. And the only path for Trump's victory would be to actually totally run the table, run the map, and get and sweep every other state, which is not going to be the case. And so Biden is leading in Georgia right now. If there's any votes left, they're going to be coming from majority Democrat counties. That's where the remainder of the votes are going to be coming. And the reason for that, and the reason why these fraud allegations are basically frivolous and there's nothing to substantiate them, is because Trump specifically told all of his supporters to vote on election day, whereas the Democrats, for the most part, I'm not going to say one or two are not in there, but the fact is that most of the mail-in ballots are from Democrats, so it's not a surprise that all the late-coming ballots are going to be Biden votes. It's just a fact. So according to AP, they currently have Biden leading Trump in Georgia. He has 49.5 compared to Trump's 49.3. Biden has 2.461 million. Trump has 2.454 million. So it is a very close race. It's not that blue wave landslide the Democrats were hoping for this year. In fact, it was really an inaccurate poll reading once again. The pundits messed up. It's becoming very obvious that they just don't know what they're talking about, and the polls are wrong. They never thought that it was going to be this close. They had Biden leading nationally 8.5 points, 10 points, 11 points, depending on what source you got your polls from, and that's not the case. The fact is that Trump technically still has a shot if all the votes were to go to him now, but Biden is probably going to be the winner. But the fact is that this is a much closer race than we thought, and still over 70 million, about half the country still voted for Trump. Biden's leading in Nevada, which has been the slowest state out of all of them. We've been waiting for more votes for them. Probably the slowest counter, which is coincidental. It's ironic, because you would think Nevada, Vegas, they'd be the fastest counter. But they currently have Biden at 49.8 compared to Trump's 48%. Biden has 632,000 compared to Trump's 609, nearly 610,000. North Carolina, Trump is actually leading. He's actually leading in North Carolina by just a hair. He's up just about 0.4% there compared to Biden. Pennsylvania, Biden took the lead there just yesterday, and he has about 0.4% more than Trump. Arizona, it's been confirmed by many networks, including AP, that Biden has won the state of Arizona, although there are still some votes trickling in. Florida, Trump did take Florida. However, it is a decisive foregone conclusion. Biden will win. So essentially, two things are for certain right now. Number one being that Biden will have at least 270. He'll have the sufficient amount to be crowned the president-elect, and he will have at least 270. Maybe it's 272. Maybe there's a combination in which he reaches over 300. There's even combinations in which he could reach over 400, but he will have at least 270. The second thing we know for certain is that Trump is not conceding. He's not giving up just yet. Now, there's no law mandating that a candidate actually has to make a concession speech or concede at all, right? So there's nothing in the Constitution that actually says that a candidate must concede. The most recent example of a concession speech from an incumbent president would be George H.W. Bush. And then there's an infamous concession speech from Al Gore that he gave that he actually retracted. He called the Bush campaign back to say that he retracted the concession speech, being that he wanted to litigate the Florida results. So with Trump refusing to concede, it also puts Biden in an awkward position because as per the tradition, the candidate does not make a winning speech until the other candidate concedes. Biden has made a couple speeches so far. He has called for unity for the nation. He had said that he's going to be a president for all Americans, not just the ones that voted for him. But he hasn't unequivocally yet said that he has won the election because the networks have yet to call that, and Trump also has not given up. So here's a timeline that we could probably expect in the next couple weeks and months. I would probably envision that lawsuits will continue to ensue from the Trump campaign. They will do recounts in certain states, as the campaign has every right to recount. A recount is not a call for fraud. A recount is actually pretty protocol in tight races, and it's totally normal. And in the history of the United States, we have had recounts before. That's nothing taboo. Namely, you would think of 2000 with Bush versus Gore in Florida, but that was only one state as opposed to several states which the Trump campaign is calling for. So we'll most likely have those recounts, and you also have to remember that never in history has a recount decided a different result of an election. So in this case, Biden is leading in all of these states, and unless the remaining votes that come out today actually put Trump ahead, which is very unlikely, then you would see that recount happen and probably Biden would still be declared the winner. But it has never in history changed the other candidate. So Trump has very slim odds of these recounts ever changing the results for him. So at that point, Trump could give up. He could succumb to Biden's victory and finally make a concession speech, or he'll continue to press at it. This could potentially go to the Supreme Court if there's truly something to substantiate his lawsuits, as he is saying that there has been widespread fraud in multiple states, some of them being mostly Democrat-led cities, where he believes officials were not allowed to watch over the counting. He believes there were dead people that were voting and people that were registered in multiple states. There's so many claims here, and we haven't really had any evidence yet except a couple doctored videos and some viral videos that have been spread around by Trump's sons. Remember, over 70 million people still voted for Trump, and most of them do have his back. Very few of them are also giving up. So even with the recent confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett, and even if she rules in his favor in some sort of case, there's really nothing that he could do. There's very little that could change the outcome of this election, being that there's simply no evidence and nothing to substantiate these claims that he's making. So if Trump refuses to concede the election and the lawsuits don't change the results, and we have the recounts in all of these states, which are very costly as well, it costs millions of dollars in some cases to have these recounts, as you'd have to hire staff and it'd be very tedious and arduous. So after all that, after everything's said and done and nothing changes still, Trump will probably still not give up because he has one more shot. And that's going to be when the Electoral College convenes and finally casts their votes for the candidate that they are pledged to do. From there, you could have a scenario where we see faithless electors. Let's say the election is very close. Biden only ekes out 270 by a couple electoral votes. You could have faithless electors that actually go the other way, which is possible because of a couple reasons. Perhaps Trump could actually bribe some of these delegates that are supposed to vote for Biden and coerce them into voting for him, or the delegates that are supposed to cast their votes on our behalf are not chosen by us, but rather the GOP legislators in states like Pennsylvania and Georgia, and they actually go faithless and against what they're supposed to do, and they put their vote for Trump. That could potentially change the outcome of the election or even tie it, and then it would be sent to the House. The House of Representatives actually choose the president, and then the Senate chooses the vice president. In fact, there is a slim scenario where you could actually have a vice president from one party and a president from another. That's extremely unlikely, but it has actually happened once before in American history. There's also a situation where you could actually have the Speaker of the House assume the position and assert her authority. In this case, it would be her, as it is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and she could actually become the president. There's so much fine print here that constitutional scholars will have to be reading through and trying to explain to us American citizens if it ever got that far. The Supreme Court in a conservative majority and 3 of those justices being appointed by Trump himself, you never know what could happen here. I would imagine if Biden does reach 270 and he is the president-elect and somehow Trump pulls it off and he actually changes the results, there would be warfare in the streets. But calling back to the situation of a recount, every single time there has been a recount, the number of votes that separates the candidates actually has changed, either a more substantial margin or a more narrow margin. But every single time there has been a recount, the number has changed. It's never flipped the results of an election, but as a matter of fact, it has been dynamic, and it was found that the final count after that recount did change. We've never seen this sort of scenario before where we had a president that refused to concede like this, at least in modern history. What are your thoughts and your predictions? What do you think is going to happen here? Let us know down below in the comments. Let's keep the discussion going. More updates and developments will be revealed all on this channel. This is your one-stop shop for everything you want to know when it comes to business, finance, investing, entrepreneurship, mindset strategy, and tips and tricks. I also do stimulus package and stimulus check updates, as well as I've been covering a lot of the election lately. With this election, we've been covering a lot of it on this channel. If you did enjoy this video, if you got value out of it, click the like button for me, smash the like button. Just to help with that YouTube algorithm, YouTube will push the video out to more people, so it does support me and my channel. And if you want to see more videos from my channel, hit that subscribe button, the big red button. Also hit that notification bell as well. That way you're notified every single time I do make a new one. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.